Everywhere I go, I think about my garden and what I can do to bring in more beautiful things that will make my garden serene and just a wonderful, tranquil place to be. And where else to get some inspiration than going to a beach? Hi, everybody. I'm Aubrey. This is Crybaby Seminole Homestead, and welcome to my channel. As I was walking down to the beach, I noticed, besides the tall grasses, that there are wild strawberries growing. I don't know if these were possibly native or maybe they escaped from someone's garden. I didn't see any fruit growing on the strawberry plants, but I thought how charming it was to see strawberry plants growing on the pathway from the hotel down to the beach. It's absolutely beautiful and precious. And I saw lots of tall grasses and other plants that made me think about some kind of, meadow look to the
Amy,
garden that I might
are you gonna want to
incorporate for next year.
walk to the beach so
I do
we
have
can
quite a
start?
few different
That
types
was
of wheat
the
seeds
worst idea that
and
we've had.
other grains that I think would look really pretty to add texture to the garden. As I was looking through here, I did find quite a few different flowering plants, and I thought, what a beautiful pop of color. The yellow flowers over here on the trail were just so lovely. Driftwood makes another nice little decor in the garden. I love to use driftwood and shells in planters. I just think it looks so precious. And looking out the ocean, it's just so, it gives you the same feeling as when you're in your garden, that just peaceful feeling where you can just kind of lose yourself and get back to nature. It's definitely grounding. I'm not really into like the all of that, those techniques and stuff, but when you're walking barefoot in the sand and you're listening to the ocean waves, it gives me the same feeling as when I'm watering my plants and I'm seeing hummingbirds. It's just absolutely restoring my soul to be around nature in this way. And so as I was walking around, I was actually thinking, in what way could I incorporate the things I enjoyed on my walk out to the beach in my garden? Are you getting dizzy yet? I was going a little fast, going back and forth. Like, look at this. It's all the way around. It's beautiful. Um, but the sky, it's kind of overcast here. I did find seed pods. I thought, oh my gosh, every gardener's looking for seed pods. Wherever I go, I'm looking for seed pods. I thought, this would be interesting to try to gather maybe some seeds and see if I can get some of these plants to grow in my own garden. Of course, be very careful about the footprint and when you're taking something from a natural place that, you're following rules and so forth, and that even if there aren't rules, that you think about being the stewards of our earth, that we're not taking what more than what we're going to use or need. But I did plant some of the seeds right there. I was like, you know what, I want the plants to grow right there where they're supposed to. And I thought, what can I do to replicate this in my garden? Because I do like this natural look. And living in the Pacific Northwest, I'm not all right on the beach, but I thought, how could I make it look a little bit more aesthetic? And whereas I can't actually travel all the time, I can't afford to always even take day trips necessarily. But how can I bring that back with me in some way or another? I thought, I do like the look of shells in planters, but I also like the look of sand and wood and shells, and all of that looks so cool. And so I thought, this is something I want to do, even if I'm not using these plants necessarily, something that looks like that. So as I'm looking at these, there's lots of seed pods. Some of they're not. You can see that they're not ready, but you can see that they're forming seed pods. They almost look like a calico, like it looks like a succulent plant. Like I grow mother of thousands, and there's some other that are very similar that are flowering. As you can see, that this is a flowering plant. Those flowers are pretty small, and they kind of remind me of brassicas when they go to flower. So one thing to think about is like maybe letting some of your uh, garden seeds, your garden plants go to flower, even if like you're growing it for a crop. Maybe let a few go just for the look. So I do collect shells. This one was like falling apart, so I left it on the beach. But I was like, you don't want to be a hoarder of nature and take it away, because there's going to be little crabs and limpets and things that are going to use those things as a natural environment to live in. But I thought, something like this, even like I noticed the feathers, It's like, I never thought about it, but wouldn't it be cool to use feathers as markers for where you planted something in your garden? Like, obviously you couldn't write down the name of the plant on the feather, but even like, I have craft supplies. I have a lot of probably black and white feathers when I used to do just random like mask making. When I taught like an English class where we did like a philosophy unit. And so I'm like, even using feathers as markers, or like I planted something here, would look really neat in a garden, and they last for a very long time. Um, Also, when you have shells, if you have seashells, I would rinse them off, make sure they're not salty unless they're salt tolerant plants. But if you had some broken seashells, as they break down, they're adding calcium to the soil. So I do like the look of rocks and seashells on top of the soil, and as they're breaking down, they're actually really helping your plants. Absolutely beautiful view. Just gorgeous. So therapeutic. Actually, a lot of stuff's going on in my life right now. And as I'm doing this voiceover, I'm just thinking, like, maybe I need to go down for a walk on the beach just to, like, get a little bit of peace. But I get the same feeling from going for a walk on the beach as I do going for a walk in my garden, and as I'm tending my plants and weeding and succession planting, I get that feeling of that back to nature. Um, so I was enjoying looking at the jellies that had washed up on shore. Sometimes I'll use something and scoop them out. If you try to help the jellies, make sure that you like get the sand underneath them. Otherwise, you're hurting them. So if I get a big piece of driftwood or something, I might try to scoop them up and then release them back into the water if you're lucky. I found little bits of rocks and stones. I'm fairly certain that's a piece of igneous rock. If I'm wrong, pop a comment below, but I'm pretty sure it is. It's very similar to some things I found where I had found some lava rocks. So I thought that's really cool. Just looking at like all the different things. You have the living things, you have the non-living things. Everything's kind of working in order. um, Thinking about like things I would do in my science classroom, like how could I use this footage and stuff as an observation for my students, since there's not a lot of funding for field trips. But also, how might I use some of this as substance and inspiration for a garden? Well, as you're looking at this, what do you think? Like, I like to put a little bit of sand on top of my soil sometimes. I'm always collecting rocks in my pockets and my purse. Like a couple weeks before this, I filmed this video. I was carrying my purse and I was like, this is like someone put a brick in my purse. I dumped it out and half my purse is full of rocks. um, but I'm always looking for little seashells. Even little broken bits of shells look so pretty in around a plant in a garden. And if you have a little house plant, having a few things where like the mother of pearl is shining, is kind of reflecting upwards, is really beautiful. So things like this around a succulent as a house plant would look really pretty. Um, a piece of driftwood, a little bit of sand, a couple seashells. Say that fast. Seashells by the seashore. It would look just really kind of cute, especially like, I don't know. A lot of people don't go for that nautical theme in the bathroom anymore, but I think it looks pretty cute. In here, you see all different kinds of like seaweeds, and now not everything I'm showing in the video is not plant life. Some of it is animal life or algae, and but I get that kind of grassy look here, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't use a lot of grasses in my garden. Whatever grasses I get are usually weeds. But one year I actually planted quite a bit of wheat just as an experiment. And when I saw the wind blowing and the wheat was kind of like nodding, um, it was so full of seeds that it kind of like drooped, and it was just so pretty. Little notice here, like there is definitely humans around here and walking some four-legged friends. Somebody clearly made a big little tide pool over there and had a good day. So looking here, there's definitely human interactions. And my family did pull out our kites, and we were flying kites because the beaches in Washington State up along the Pacific Northwest are generally very windy. I was really pleased though that it wasn't so windy that it was unbearable, because sometimes we'll go to a beach, um, and you see here the pelicans. That was so cool. I really enjoyed watching the pelicans. They would dive down into the water. I I don't know that I've ever seen pelicans hunting before, and that was really special. Um, but I kind of digress. I really enjoy being out there looking at all the beautiful wildlife, and as I garden, I notice more and more wildlife being drawn to my property and around my property. And even I think it was a year or two ago, I started seeing, once in a while, I'd see osprey, which is very unique because I had never seen one before in my life. And I actually had to look up on the Audubon Society to figure out what it was. But there was a male and a female, and they were calling to each other. It was the most unique sound I ever heard. And so it took me a while to identify what they were, but we had osprey flying through our neighborhood, and they were up in some really tall trees. I was like, I sure hope they don't. They're more, like predators of other wildlife, not just like birds, but I was a little worried about having predatory birds on my property because there's so much wildlife. Now, this is not a plant, it should be like an algae. I think it's bladderwrack, if I remember correctly. Um, Pretty sure it's bladder rack. And so if you look that up, it has like a little bladder that is full of air, and it makes it buoyant in the water. So that's pretty cool. I thought that was really interesting. And I think I'm going to take a little bit of footage and show this to my students. And so they can talk about buoyancy and, different types of the different kingdoms of life. And I just thought that is so cool. I mean, it definitely reminds me of a succulent, right? But instead of being full of water, it's full of air. So super neat. But that's really pretty. What plants does this remind you of? It definitely got me thinking about wanting to have more biodiversity in my garden, and maybe more native plants, things like that. So I did go ahead and toss it in the water because I wanted to see it float. I'm just a child. We're all children at heart, I think, to some extent. But I really enjoy playing in the water and looking at all the stuff on the ground. And like, you watch other people at the beach and they're just like laying in the sun, just like trying to get a suntan or something. But when I go to the beach, I'm looking at the birds and staring in the water, watching it glisten, remembering when I was a little girl, and I used to imagine I would be a mermaid when I grew up. But I'm always looking at the wildlife. And then we had gone to, there's like a little Marsh's Museum, I think is what it was called. They had some field guides, and I kind of skimmed through some of them to look at some of the organisms I noticed when I was on the beach. I didn't buy one because I have so many of those types of things, but I didn't bring one. I didn't bring any field guides with me this day. So I did look up a couple of the organisms. There are so many different types of birds out here, lots of different kinds of seagulls, and like I said, the pelicans were really cool to watch. I didn't get any really good footage of them diving down as they were hunting for fish, but it was amazing. They would dive straight down into the water. They're like flying horizontally, and all of a sudden, zoom, straight down. It was so flipping cool. It made me want to go and get a really good camera. Because a lot of times in the garden, all I need is my phone. But if I really want to capture wildlife, especially if it's far away, getting a good camera down the line is something I probably will want to invest in. But I really did enjoy it. Whether or not like you can really see and appreciate how beautiful this is. Whenever I'm at the ocean, I get this sense of well-being, and like things are bigger than me, which gives me a sense of peace, that the world doesn't depend on me. It's not on my shoulders. It's so relieving. The sound of the ocean, it rejuvenates my soul. And if you get that feeling, pop a comment below and let me know what things in nature make you feel like you are rejuvenated and healed. I feel like God has, given us so many different ways of comforting us, and listening to the ocean and seeing the sunset and, seeing nature and all these different living organisms living their own lives, their own life cycle and all of that. It just makes me feel like the burden's not on me, And this is just absolutely beautiful. I come back everywhere I go, I come back with ideas of ways to incorporate experiences and things with my garden so that I can kind of keep it with me. So, with that, you guys, be good, be sweet, grow a garden if you want to eat. And I sure hope that you're doing well and enjoying your life. In Jesus' name, amen. I'll see you on the next one.